Hello and welcome to In Pursuit of Clarity, episode number 33, entitled Background Music. At some point in the future, I plan to create a video or longer form podcast entitled The Great Cheapening, discussing the modern trend towards shallow and valueless existence, in which we increasingly gravitate towards the most superficial enjoyments and entertainments, and keep virtually everything of depth at arm's length. And this will aim to be something of an introduction to that larger topic. Most of you are probably familiar with that famous line, "So much depends on the weather." Part of the meaning here is a reference to the backdrop, the setting or environment or frame within which all else occurs. The importance and influence of this backdrop with regard to setting the tone is immense, to the extent that it could hardly be overstated or exaggerated, even if one tried. Picture a moment in your life in which you experienced the most lofty or transcendent state of being, in which everything, big or small, suddenly took on greater significance, or even greater clarity. And if only for a moment, you caught some glimpse of the deeper undercurrents that bestow spirit and energy to existence. It's likely that during and just after this experience, your senses were heightened, your thoughts and feelings elevated, and the power radiating throughout the universe felt almost tangible, and you were able to feel connected to it, almost as a conduit. Now take a moment to picture the opposite extreme, whether it be an experience at the DMV or some local mall, the type of experience that made you despair for the future of humanity, or any experience of extreme cheapness, ugliness, crudeness, or baseness, made manifest to the extent that it can't help but alter your state of being while you're in the midst of it. Even afterwards, the residue of that experience stays with you, even if not consciously recognized. For lack of a better descriptor, one might say your frequency or wavelength was lowered, in a manner so obvious you could practically feel a physical change wash over you. The weather plays a role in helping craft various states of being on a meta level. We all experience these subtle shifts and evolutions simultaneously with those living around us, and it's an inescapable backdrop. On the most gloomy and overcast day, the type that doesn't even have the decency to provide some raindrops, but just hangs like a dreary gray over our heads, if one were to measure the overall sentiment of those experiencing such weather, they'd almost certainly notice slight changes in mood and mindset accordingly. On a sunny spring day, with birds chirping and a slight breeze, in which the whole world seems vibrant, alive, and actively springing into being, those same measurements might show the opposite psychological shifts. And of course, I'm speaking very broadly and generally here. There'd be a wealth of exceptions, with several individuals happening to have an excellent day in the most dreary of environments, or those having exceedingly bad luck and having horrible days, despite pleasant surroundings. But overall, the setting within which we operate has a far more dominant shaping effect than we often give it credit for. But I'm speaking of weather here only to draw an analogy. The weather represents a background to our developing stories that we can't easily control. And at least to some extent, I think this variety is a good thing. Seasons are important. Our appreciation of any one season springs from its contrast to another, and each has its unique natural beauty and intrinsic value. What this cast is about is the backdrop we can control, and far more importantly, a type of backdrop we should control more proactively. Our every stimulus throughout the day represents this customized background, the frame and setting of our existence. And although it's tempting to let ourselves off the hook and claim we have minimal control over this background, due to work or family situations or various obligations, at the end of the day, we really are the sole deciding factor with regard to what we let in and what we keep at arm's length. The friends we keep close to us, the books, articles, or websites we read, the entertainment we take in, the music we listen to, these all represent decisions on our part. decisions that will shape our mood, mindset, emotional state, but also serve to literally shape our mind and body. Both mind and body are incredibly adaptive and flexible, representing the genius of our Creator. For an impressive visual example, take a look at pictures of athletes across sports that cause individual limbs to be used far more than others, and observe the asymmetrical development, the way musculature tends to grow as needed, according to the body's expressed needs. Our habits shape us, and this resulting shape helps determine the habits we form, and so on and back and forth in an endless flowing cycle. It's an immense help to be cognizant of this, now more than ever. Our culture has degenerated to the extent that we now live amidst the equivalent of the worst sort of mall music, being piped into every street, every shop, every home, that most grating and substanceless fluff. Much of it now designed via algorithm to ensure it's as superficially addictive as it is hollow. It radiates out of our television sets, our computers, our books and magazines and newspapers, and it cheapens everything it touches. Just as energy and spirit is contagious, so is pettiness and superficiality, capable of spreading like a cancer, often unseen and unnoticed, and yet ever creeping forward. But if one can keep this in mind, there are solutions to be found. The best advice is to pay attention to your inner nature and deep intuition as you navigate through the day. Pay attention to how things lift you up or drag you down, how engaging with any particular individual or in any sort of behavior feels as if it grants you additional energy or saps this energy away. Speaking personally, it's music that has one of the most profound and consistent effects here, using literal tones to set the figurative tone, broadly speaking. At other times, silence can be equally effective. Through experimentation and careful attention over time, I've learned ways to make use of what works and studiously avoid what doesn't to bring myself to that preferred state of mind almost at will. And I'm immensely thankful for that. Because without it, not only would be getting any valuable work done be all but impossible, but life itself wouldn't hold much charm. When you're surrounded by beauty, or harmony, or order, or balance, and you banish the opposites out of sight, they're also banished out of mind, and it becomes so much easier to see all of the beauty and harmony and right order existing in the world. Because despite our unhealthy times, there is still much of this, and still more to be imagined and envisioned for the future. Virtually all of the best type of creativity, the only sort worthy of that title, happens in this state of being, a forward or upward looking, an inspired state that stokes the will to think more cleanly and nobly, to approach the world more magnanimously, to accomplish greater things for greater reasons. For some, it might be immersion in the written words of great hearts and minds. For others, it might be works of art. For others, a walk or hike in a specific type of natural setting, or even just an expansive view, or even time with an exceptional loved one. More often, it'll be some combination of these that's needed to attain a noticeably higher state. But what I'm suggesting here is that you consider paying close attention to what works best, and then proactively make the effort to control your environment accordingly. We're surrounded by energy drains, and I think this applies especially to many of those hearing my words right now. I don't think it's conspiratorial to say we're something of a broadly targeted group in this context, and one of the unstated goals of this targeting is to disempower in every way, and I'd suggest this is one of the most fundamental. But because these drains can still be escaped, the ultimate responsibility falls on us. And in my experience, it's always best to accept and embrace this responsibility. And pardon my veering into the abstract or poetic, but if you're able to cultivate yourself into a purer stream, you're then able to act as something of a fresh spring to those around you. And this is undoubtedly one of the best gifts a person can give. And it's not just the deeper level that I'm speaking to here. Our brain is a product of the influences we allow ourselves to be immersed in a much more extreme fashion than we tend to recognize. This grants us immense self-authoring and shaping power. If someone was raised from birth on a steady diet of nothing but stories of heroes of great courage and daring, and surrounded by personality types that fit a similar mold, almost inevitably, they're bound to orient their lives in this direction and seek to become that heroic ideal. If someone were only surrounded with the most lofty and inspired works of any spiritual tradition, they'll inevitably adopt the frame of a sage and process their world at large accordingly. These are extremes to illustrate the point, but it's important to realize every influence, no matter how small, has some lasting effect and imprint. And the combined totality of all of them shape and orient us into who we are. It's important to clarify that I'm not suggesting being dour or pedantic or overly serious is the ideal. Far from it. I've always felt Nietzsche was at his best when he spoke about learning to laugh, but a loftier, richer, Olympian laughter, as opposed to a crude, base, and petty laughter. And there's a world of difference. One is healthy, robust, powerful, and life-affirming. The other is nihilistic and small, often cutting and filled with resentment. Not to be confused with mere resentment, and traditionally defined as, quote, a psychological state arising from suppressed feelings of envy and hatred that can't be acted upon, frequently resulting in some form of self-abasement, end quote. As we move towards the more healthy and vital environments and stimuli, it affects everything about us, including our sense of humor, why we laugh, even how we laugh. This doesn't mean everyone should force themselves to live off of Plato or Emerson, classical music or ballet or opera. There's no one-size-fits-all path here, and the fact that we all have unique roles to play is part of the beauty of nature's balance, and why I suggest actively searching and monitoring your deepest reactions as you do so. We each have something of an internal tuning fork, and when we're able to avoid the illusions and masks and find what truly resonates with us on a personal level, we know we're that much closer to finding our individually destined path. And some of what I've said so far might sound cliché or obvious, and to some extent that might be a fair description. But the points are valuable enough to warrant restating and voicing aloud. And there's a significant difference between passively knowing something and actively knowing something. And only the latter allows us to practice and hone this unique art I'm speaking to here. If one isn't consciously measuring and noting their deepest innate reactions to stimuli, these reactions are soon forgotten and leave no conscious imprint. Which means instead of an ongoing learning experience, allowing for growth and progression, it's more of a fresh, frenetic chaos each day. And this practically guarantees there won't be any improvement or refinement, but rather a never-ending succession of randomly occurring environments and happenings, left up to chance. Still peaks and valleys, but you'll not be in any control, unable to exercise any guiding force, and thus unable to maximize the good and minimize the bad. In summary, I think we can all feel it. Much of the world has become sick, and this causes many sick signals to be broadcast, and then unconsciously picked up and rebroadcast in a variety of ways. The more of these we're exposed to, and the more regularly we're exposed to them, the more these course through our own bloodstream. I'm confident that someday, in the not too distant future, the world will change significantly, one way or another, and this sickness will cease to relentlessly stalk us day in and day out. Until then, and insofar as we're able, we should be seeking to smash those mall speakers, to eliminate all meaningless noise, and to try to always have our own music on hand, figuratively. You'll literally be the better for it, and by refusing to digest and distribute these degenerative poisons, you'll be making the world a better place. And that's all for this cast. Thank you for listening.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my own